Welcome to War Room Pandemic. It is Holy Saturday, the 11th of April, the year of our Lord 2020. This is a War Room Pandemic special, Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese under the Chinese Communist Party. I want to thank all of our distribution partners, the John Fredericks Radio Network, America's Voice.News, the streaming service of the Trump movement. They are now Dish Channel 219, Newsmax TV, FM 99.1 and 103.9 in Chicago. Also today, Gateway Pundit, the Minnesota Star, the Ohio Star, the Michigan Star, the Tennessee Daily, the Minnesota Sun and the Tennessee Star. 5 of those newspapers and their websites under Michael Patrick Leahy, all linked to this live. Also, Gateway Pundit, have it up hopefully momentarily. So it's throughout the United States. Also, our distribution partners, Epoch Times and New Tang Dynasty Television. We had Joshua Phillips on the other day for the great documentary that's up that we link to nonstop, the origins of the situation of this virus in Wuhan. Great investigative report by Epoch Times. We're going to have Simone Gao later in the show from the Epoch Times. Also in New Tang Dynasty TV, which I co-produced the film with. Claws of the Red Dragon. That is the story of Huawei. And, of course, G News and GTV, which will have this subtitled in Mandarin shortly after the broadcast and blown through the firewall. That is the digital prison that imprisons the Chinese people. On G News and GTV later in the day. Of course, it's nexus.org and IRRS, 250 million English-speaking people throughout the world. And from Latin America to Africa to Russia, India. And we want to make sure that this is a show about solidarity with the Chinese people. Thanks, Jack. It's got to be consistent. I know Jack's in studio. We got the beeping computer. This is about solidarity with the Chinese people. Today, we're going to show you what life under the Chinese Communist Party is like. The Chinese people and the people of Tibet and East Turkestan and all the surrounding areas are treated like slaves. If you're sitting home with no job, no income, waiting for a handout of the protection, the payroll protection plan, which is a fantastic program of President Trump and the administration to try to get cash to entrepreneurs, but really it's only for a couple of months. This entire debacle, this entire tragedy, if not caused by the labs themselves and either a bioweapon or inadvertently as getting out on the vaccine, and that's all to be adjudicated later. We're not saying that whole thing with the labs has got to be reviewed and looked into, and it's incumbent upon the Chinese Communist Party to get that information out to the World Health Organization, to CDC and others. But we do know for a fact that they suppressed the information. They probably knew about this as early as mid-November, but no later than mid-December. So for 30 or 45 days, they suppressed this. And the biggest victims of that suppression was the poor citizens of Wuhan and Hubei province. And we've said from day one, there has to be a Nuremberg-type trial eventually, and there will be. There will be in years to come, and you heard it here first. And the jury will be the free citizens of Wuhan who will sit in judgment of the people who did this happen, and they will sit in as our peers. They will sit in and represent all of mankind. Before we've got a packed show today with just a who's who of the freedom fighters that fight for the freedom of the Chinese people, and many Chinese on here too. We would actually have more, and we will have these in the days and weeks ahead. Right now, you should understand there's incredible pressure from the Chinese Communist Party to suppress any voice and to threaten anyone in a free country like the Republic of China, in Taiwan, or in Hong Kong, or in the United States, or in London, that your family will be in prison, your family will be tortured, your family will be dealt with if you happen to have a voice of freedom and support this. It's symbolic in the Catholic branch or the Catholic segment or practice of the Christian religion. Holy Saturday is obviously this is the holiest or most solemn weekend. Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, Sunday, and it's Christ's descent into hell. And that's what we thought was quite symbolic to now let the American people who should be in solidarity, must be in solidarity with our Chinese brothers and sisters and see the hell that they live every day. We're going to start in Hong Kong in a minute, but first we've got something we've been working on. We are going to go out today. We think that and we want to have Dave Ramaswamy on, our fantastic biostatistician, but he can't join us. But he knows Dr. Tedros. He knows Dr. Tedros from working with Dr. Tedros for years in Africa. Dr. Tedros, I think, we have to immediately cut off all funding. The United States of America must cut off all funding immediately to the World Health Organization. Dr. Tedros is a running dog to the Chinese Communist Party. And there's no bigger insult you can give someone than call them a running dog in Chinese culture and society. He is a running dog for the Chinese Communist Party. He's a mouthpiece. He's a very dangerous individual because of how he's kowtowed to the blood is on his hands also for suppressing this information. He should have asked the hard questions. I believe that he knew that the Republic of China, the Free Republic of China in Taiwan, told him on 31 December of 2019, told him there was human-to-human transmission. So he is guilty as the Chinese Communist Party. He must step down before any more American money. In fact, we should ask for our money back. And our recommendation, this is inextricably linked. Dr. Tedros must step down. All funding must stop, and we must nominate immediately Dr. Ben Carson to be the head of the World Health Organization. Dr. Ben Carson is a brilliant brain surgeon. He's Johns Hopkins University, one of the greatest medical institutes in the West, in the United States. A fabulous man, a guy with a big heart. His story is incredible of how he rose to become one of the top brain surgeons in the world. He ran to be president of the United States and was the only, I believe, candidate that ever came tied in the polling or slightly ahead of Donald Trump. In October of 2015, he is on the cabinet. He's been a fantastic cabinet member. He's a great man all around. Greg Manns, who's in studio with us, our guy who runs the engine room. Greg was on his campaign. You were one of the senior communications guys.
Yep, I was with Dr. Carson before coming to the Trump campaign.
And what kind of guy is Carson?
He's the most genuine individual I've ever met.
Ben Carson is the epitome of the American story, epitome of American exceptionalism. He is a good man. He's a Christian man. He regardless of your faith, your creed, anything. This guy's got a big heart. He loves people every day. He does not need to be the secretary of HUD. He's done a great job, but that was a sacrifice to come back of the business enterprise he had to sacrifice to really go on a small government salary. And to do this, he did it because he grew up in the projects. He is just an extraordinary individual. Dr. Ben Carson has to immediately take over the reins of the World Health Organization. We need an American imprint on that. If we're going to give the money, it has to have an American imprint, not a Chinese Communist Party imprint. And Dr. Ben Carson is like Caesar's wife. He is without any blame or guilt or any hidden agenda. He's just a good man and a brilliant brain surgeon and understands the world, understands medicine, understands the developing world, understands the third world, understands the power moves. Remember, he's the only person that was really competitive with Donald Trump, right? At that one moment in time, he was the one, I think it was in October of 15, that he became in the polls, I think, for a couple of days, actually led Donald Trump. And so the American people have his back and think highly of him, regardless of your political party. Dr. Ben Carson. We're going to be jammed for time today, I know. It's a tough one. Vish Burroughs keeping us on schedule. But Dr. Tedros is a bad hombre. He's got to go. He's a running dog for a group of gangsters. If you're sitting there unemployed, if you're sitting there and have loved ones that have died, if you're sitting there every night praying for the doctors and nurses, remember the Chinese Communist Party, and they're separate from the Chinese people. They've enslaved the Chinese people. The Chinese Communist Party knew about the human-to-human transmission, lied to everybody. The World Health Organization didn't do their job, and then they went and vacuumed up from Europe, the United States, and Brazil all the personal protective equipment, the PPE. That's the single biggest thing that keeps the death rate down because it keeps the doctor and nurse units. It keeps the doctor and nurse units together and keeps them so they don't get infected and they can continue on. Remember, one of the hang-ups to testing is the PPE. They did that. That's and we know that because we see the Customs and Border, what they did, and the timeline fits together. That's premeditated murder. WHO knows that. Tedros cannot go on. And he's not going to lecture us that if we bring this up, it's racism. We're not going to lecture us that more bodies are going to die. He's got to go. We can't give him. I don't want to hear any happy. Dr. Birx, hold the scarves, lose the spin. We don't need to say how great a job World Health Organization is doing. They're not doing a great job. They're doing a terrible job. Even Ron Klain was on the MSNBC the other night. Even he said, well, the Trump administration has got an F, and they're getting a B minus. So, okay, let's turn now to Ben Carson, head of World Health Organization. We get a unanimous vote there, Jack?
Absolutely.
No doubt?
I love Carson.
No doubt.
Wonderful human.
Carson is a great man. Carson is emblematic of the American system, okay? He is emblematic of what we're about. He's emblematic, and he's a brilliant brain surgeon. I don't even know what Tedros is, but I tell you what Tedros is. He's a running dog for the Chinese Communist Party. Let's now go to Hong Kong and Mark Simon. Mark is the editor-in-chief of Apple News, is it? Apple News is the paper of freedom in Hong Kong.
Not the editor-in-chief.
You're the freedom paper. You're the freedom paper in Hong Kong, but you're also quite closely associated with my hero Cardinal Zen.
Yes, Cardinal Zen's one of my favorite. Old Joseph is a great man.
So tell us about. We're here on Holy Saturday. Tell us what it's like to be a Christian or a Catholic in mainland China. What is your life like? How this show is called Descent into Hell: Life of the Chinese under the CCP. What is it like to be a practicing Christian or Catholic?
Well, it's always been difficult. I mean, it's been difficult, ever since the days of the communists coming in. In the last 6 years, it's been basically you can't really worship as freely as you want, or you can't even really worship. Xi Jinping has made religion one of his main targets for suppression, and as such, basically it is basically being repressed. That's all I can say in that sense. But you can't gather. The priest that you're dealing with is probably appointed by the government. You walk into a church, there's a picture of Xi Jinping. Religion's a highly personal matter. It's your relationship between you and Jesus Christ. And what happens is applicable to the state. And it's so hard to explain to people outside of that because I remember a story. You want to know a Joe Biden story? Years ago, Joe Biden came to Asia, and he was in China. And they basically asked him, don't take communion at the Chinese Catholic Church. Well, of course, guess who takes communion at the Chinese Catholic Church? Guess who's got the photographs with the Chinese Catholic Church Patriotic Association giving them credence. At this point in time, unfortunately, under this Pope, the underground Catholic Church has been abandoned. It's largely being, I wouldn't use the term wiped out, but just basically being slowly squished out of existence. And there's really not going to be much of a chance for any organized religion in China that does not basically bow to the Communist Party. And I would even add after that, they're not so crazy about having any religion at all. They don't really see the need for it. And so it's hard to explain to people sometimes outside of the China. But, if you are a practicing Catholic, you risk jail.
What I want to go back to and by the way, I tell you what, Mark, could we ask you, I know you're calling from Hong Kong, could we ask you to stay over for the next segment? Because of my tirade against Tedros and for Ben Carson, we've run out of time in this segment. Can you please stay over?
Sure.
Okay, Mark Simon from Apple News. We're going to take a short commercial break. # War Room Pandemic. Want to hear all of your thoughts today on Descent into Hell. We're going to return with Mark Simon in Hong Kong in just a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. We have a special going on today on Holy Saturday, Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese under the Chinese Communist Party. Our guest from Hong Kong is Mark Simon with Apple News. Mark, I want to go back. It's been reported that there are almost 100 million house Christians in China that practice their religion. This is separate from the underground Catholic Church, but there may be 100 million evangelicals and other types of Christianity, Protestants, that under severe repression, that's where the house Christians came and have gathering places. Right now, in the West, in Europe, and particularly the United States, this weekend, the holiest weekend, the most solemn weekend in Christianity, Passover weekend, Passover started Wednesday, this great tradition in the Jewish religion and then the Christian religion that we hold every year, the most solemn time of both faiths. We're all house Christians. There's no, the Pope does a solo walk through Rome the other day. It's stunning. No world war, no conflict in Europe. Nothing has ever done this. We've literally become house Christians because of the Chinese Communist Party. And so can you tell us what life is like for the house Christians in mainland China? And because it looks like Xi is just another form of emperor. He's an emperor, and they have to have emperor worship. It's a cult that the Chinese Communist Party wants the worship of not just the state. What they want is the worship of Xi in the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Can you walk us through this?
Well, yeah, essentially this is the problem the church has always had, in other words, and the house Christians have it as well. Basically, there cannot be another authority than the Chinese Catholic Church. Than the Chinese Communist Party. There is not another authority. And that absolute drive to wipe out any type of alternative authority is the reason why they destroy everything from civil society, even down to clubs or anything like that. So imagine if somebody comes up and says, I will give unto Caesar, what is Caesar's and for the Lord for the Lord. And imagine when that, to paraphrase that, imagine when that, when the communist hears that. As I said, that's completely unacceptable. It's not debatable. It's not open to discussion. They will not tolerate another, what they see as organization, not as a religion, as an organization that basically dilutes in any way, shape, or form their control over you. And it's good that you bring up the house Christians because, for years, whenever they would pick up a bishop or a priest or something like that, we had our little Catholic alarm bell system that could go off and we could contact different embassies and the French would go in one day and ask about them, somebody else. But the house Christians, they have nobody. They are small evangelical groups and they are completely abused on a regular basis with really no outside help. And so the Chinese Communist Party sees these people as essentially someone who questions their value system. And so in every way, shape, and form, it's just a non-starter. It's always amazing to me, Steve, when I meet people and they say, well, they'll allow this or they'll allow that. The Vatican is the worst about this. Well, we can do this or that. Well, they let you do that for a couple of months, and then they cut something out. And then you say, well, we'd like to do something else. Okay, a couple of months, and then they cut that out. And so they look to control everything in China, and religion is just part of it. And so any religion is basically kept at a very, tight rein. Now, I promise you, somewhere tomorrow, you will see pictures of Christians or Catholics somewhere celebrating Easter. I guarantee they'll have the publicity photos and the propaganda photos. But that'll be in an officially sanctioned church. And if you look around the corner, there won't be a picture of Jesus. There'll be a picture of Xi Jinping.
Why is it, I don't want to politicize this, but why is it so important that, Biden, because people are useful idiots. When he went to the Patriotic Association Catholic Church, the official Catholic Church, not the underground Catholic Church that Cardinal Zen had, but the official Catholic Church, why was that so bad to take communion and be photographed doing that?
Oh, because it essentially you're going to the faithful. It's Solzhenitsyn. Solzhenitsyn, he was being tormented. As long as he knew there was a light outside for him, as long as he knew somebody was thinking about him, that's that. Imagine if a then senator of the United States comes and basically plays patty cake with the people that are oppressing you. Imagine how that just destroys people in their hearts. It's the worst thing possible. In fact, I actually spoke to some of the diplomats who had accompanied him, and they said they just were like rolling their eyes because it's typical Joe Biden. Don't do this. Well, this is who you're dealing with. No sense. And of course, Biden, completely disregards him and goes up there and does his little game with them of, basically glad handing and, oh, it was nice to see those people. That was the Catholic Church was being oppressed at that time. And for Biden to do that was not good.
Let's
And, he was basically shown around by the Patriotic Church Association. And, you've got Catholics in jail, you've got Catholic priests locked away, Catholic bishops locked away, and he's basically giving them, a pass. So it's not good at all. And we constantly do this. I mean, you guys were talking about WHO for a second. Well, a while ago. Well, you know who had WHO before Tedros? The Chinese, because the head of the WHO was Margaret Chan from Hong Kong, who was appointed in 2006. So the Chinese have controlled WHO for, basically close to 15 years.
Well, they control with him too.
And,
real quickly, Marcus.
And what happens there is they're seeking control. They're seeking control is what they're doing. And they do the same thing with the church. Everything's about control.
Real quickly, Mark, we got to go. We got Jack Posobiec in the wings. But I want to ask you about the revolt in Hong Kong. Where does that was the most impressive thing of all of 2019, these great patriots, young Chinese men and women, the millennials standing up. Where do we stand with the insurgency of the free people of Hong Kong against the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, we have a big election coming up in the fall, and of course, the pan-democratic camp is very hopeful for that. Right now, Steve, I think it's just like every place else. Essentially, we are dealing with the virus here. Actually, the people are doing a very good job with it, and there is still a very active internet, all types of stages. The one thing that we have seen, and I think people overseas have to understand, is we have a new police chief in town. They have changed their tactics. They are arresting people very aggressively now. So it's going to be harder for the kids to get back on the streets. And I think what we'll see is a continuation of the movement, but with the kids honestly knowing every time they go out, they're probably going to be arrested.
Mark Simon from the Apple News in Hong Kong. Sir, thank you very much, and give our regards to Cardinal Zen over the Easter celebration. He is, I think, the holiest man in the world and the great symbol in the entire Catholic Church. He's our true leader. So thank you. Make sure you say give our kind regards to him.
Take care, Steve. Bye-bye.
Cardinal Zen, one of the most amazing people in the world. He's a Hong Kong Chinese and just incredible leader, incredible spiritual leader. Remember, today we're going to have Uyghurs on from East Turkestan, the Muslim faith. We're going to have people representing the Tibetan Buddhist. We're going to have folks from the Falun Gong, another spiritual kind of a form, I guess, of spiritualism, and obviously the underground Christian church, the house Christians. Since you're all house Christians now, compliments of the Chinese Communist Party. When you're not at Easter celebration tomorrow, when you're in your house for the first time in your life, and you're a little child, when you're sitting in your house and you're not in church, remember, this is not the pandemic it did to you, not a virus that did to you. It's a Chinese Communist Party has you in your house, okay? And I'm not saying it's a weapon. I'm not saying it's a virus that leaked out. I'm saying by the mere fact, and this is a fact, they lied about the human-to-human transmission. It was just like Chernobyl. They lied about it, and they didn't care how many people in Wuhan had to die as long as they tried to suppress that. The Global Times, which is kind of a tabloid, I would say it's kind of a New York Post of China, but it's the way that the CCP, because they control it, gets the word out to the common man and woman out China. It's not the People's Daily, which is kind of the New York Times equivalent. They got their post in the Global Times, which has taken me on forever, right? They say I'm a foreign devil. I'm a terrible person because I call them out every day. They now have a timeline, a WHO timeline. Do they not, Jack Maxey?
Yeah, Global Times had a story today criticizing Taiwan and the United States for their criticism of the Maoist Tedros. And they said that any claims that Taiwan had information about the virus are just lies, but they don't even actually acknowledge the claims, which is that Taiwan told the World Health Organization on the 31st of December. Then they have the gall to put up their own timeline defining what the World Health Organization did, and they leave out the 14th of January comment of no human transmission.
Global Times, you're a joke. You're not even a good propaganda arm. I don't mind if you're propaganda. I got that. I don't mind it. Be good. You're morons. We're calling you out. You left out the 14th of January. You're a bunch of morons. We're telling Xi, fire all the guys at Global Times because they're not good enough propaganda. They make you look like a moron, Xi and Wan Xishan and all the gangsters and criminals in Beijing that have foisted this on the Chinese people, okay? The Global Times are a group of third-raters. It's the 14th of January, and you can come to our website on War Room Pandemic, and you can come to the special Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese under the Chinese Communist Party, and we will give you the tweet. We will give you the tweet of the World Health Organization, the running dogs of the World Health Organization who lied on the 14th of January. By the way, the same day that I think they're signing the trade deal in the East Wing of the White House. Historical note. Lying about after talking to senior Chinese Communist Party health officials, Minister of Health, the CDC of China, there is no human-to-human transmission. Dr. Tedros, that's a stone-cold lie. The blood of the world is on your hands, sir, in the Chinese Communist Party. If they had acted at that time, none of this would have happened. We're going to take a short commercial break. We're running a little behind schedule. We're going to get caught up. We're going to get Jack Posobiec from One American News. He's a former naval intelligence officer, speaks Mandarin, knows China like the back of his hand. He's going to join us in Descent into Hell next.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, like that hard stop. Holy Saturday, the 11th of April, year of our Lord 2020. We're here at the War Room on Capitol Hill, the United States of the Federal Reserve. This is Descent into Hell. It's a special Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese under the Chinese Communist Party. I want to thank Mark Simon calling in from Hong Kong with Apple News to give us an update on the underground house Christians in the underground Catholic Church. I want to thank all our distribution partners everywhere, particularly the folks at G News and GTV that are going to put this up in Mandarin and blow it through the firewall later in the day. Now I want to turn to, in this segment, we got to get to two superstars, Jack Posobiec and later General Robert Spalding, and I've got Spalding's book right here. Jack Posobiec, former naval intelligence officer, and you know him as owning the libs as an internet troll. In his real life, he's a naval intelligence officer, speaks Mandarin, and is one of the smartest guys about China I ever met. So as soon as I train him to stop trolling the libs and owning the libs, we'll make it. Jack, thank you very much for joining us on War and Pandemic Descent into Hell.
Yeah, Steve, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate your last guest talking about the Chinese house Christians. You know, I haven't really told the story publicly much, but I actually met my wife doing translation work for house Christians. We used to go to a Bible study here in the D.C. area, and obviously I don't want to give out too many details, but we would translate what the pastor was saying over the video and be able to get it to people back in parts of China doing those house Christian work. And so my wife and I were both taking turns translating.
Tell us a little bit about that, because what the Chinese Communist Party, from the days of the emperor, Taiping Rebellion, I'll get into more of this next week, it was an ersatz version of Christianity, so it's not what it ended up being, but it started with the missionaries in the Bible movement in Canton. That became bigger, 100 times bigger than our Civil War, the Taiping Rebellion. It's one of the reasons that the central authority is always petrified, even more than the Catholic Church. They're particularly petrified about evangelical Christianity. It puts they believe that that's something that can, in the dry match of the way the atheists have taken out all God out of the culture, that tinder can catch on fire and start a prairie fire that they can't control. So one of the things they really try to suppress, just like the Roman Empire did, is the underground Christian church. The evangelical Christians are a particular target. Can you explain to us what the life is for a Christian in China?
Well, the life for a Christian in China, if you are trying to actually study the Bible, if you're actually trying to follow Christianity in terms of orthodoxy, in terms of doctrine, and you're not willing to go to those sort of approved official churches in China, it's very repressive. You're either meeting in homes that move around on a regular basis. One week you're in someone's house, the next week you're in someone else's house. Because remember, the Chinese Communist Party, they don't just employ this social surveillance in terms of digital processes that exist. They've had surveillance going back since the start of the party. What they do is they include community watchers, neighborhood watchers. Every building you live in, every dormitory has at least one person who's a member of the party or on the party payroll, and their job is to keep track of the daily lives of every single person in that area. I mean, this is down to your very apartment building will have somebody watching you from the party. And of course, every work center, every school, every classroom in some cases, especially if they think one of the professors is starting to go off the reservation or if the students are getting a little uppity. So they're keeping a very close eye on who's meeting, when they're meeting, why they're meeting, what they're up to, even to the level of who's marrying who, what sort of traditions people are following. This is all kept track of on a very regular basis, on a very personal, intimate basis. The intimate details of your personal life are known to the party and are kept in party ledgers at the small level. And the Chinese people know this. So to be a house Christian and to take part in one of these organizations is, I mean, it's incredibly dangerous. It's almost like it is actually like being part of a resistance movement within China. And it really speaks to the faith of these people, to their level of belief that they'd be willing to risk life and limb of being thrown into one of the black prisons that's not on the books, of being disappeared. They'll sometimes meet outside on the outskirts of the cities. That's Cardinal's End is, of course, famous for that. And this is the life of an everyday underground Christian, house Christian, but we're now seeing, and it's hard to, kind of wrap your arms around what the actual total of this is, but we've seen numbers 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, and growing of Christians in China that are operating and getting the faith and building up. And their point is, they're not there to necessarily challenge the party, but the party used them as a challenge because, and as I think you stated again and again, they view any authority that's over them as a challenge to their authority.
We're pressed for time, but some of the things I really want to get into this thing about the dark prisons and also the suppression of the migrant workers. There's no voice for the little guy in China, right? There's no, and the Western media does a terrible job of covering this. Talk about just the daily oppressions of the people. This is the Chinese Communist Party runs this as basically a glorified slave labor camp. Can you walk people?
Well, that's absolutely right. And to the point of where, since China initially instituted the People's Republic back in 1949, if you are thrown into prison, you are immediately put into forced labor. Whether you're men in one of the men's camps, one of the women's camps, you're immediately put into forced labor. We've seen so many indications of this going into the supply chain of the use of prison labor throughout this. Then we've also seen, of course, with the Falun Gong and now with the Uyghurs, forced organ donation, organ harvesting, essentially is what it is. And the Chinese government has essentially admitted that they're doing this, that they claim it's only for prisoners who have died or have been executed. But doctors have come out, whistleblowers that have gotten out, that have been defected, have said, look, we're going to do these donations, and we can tell these patients are still alive. They're just completely emaciated. They've been starved. We don't even know where they've been. We can't keep a track of them. And this all goes back to China using these systems, these tools as means of repression of the people. They want these stories to get out because they know that it will keep the old 100 names, the Lao Bai Xing, it will keep them in line that if you run afoul of the party. This is also the same reason that when Xi instituted his cult of personality, he immediately launched what he called the anti-corruption campaign. It wasn't an anti-corruption campaign, it was a party purge of anyone who was seen as disloyal to Xi or as a potential rival. They were sacked, they were shut down, and the newspaper headlines, not just in Global Times, but all across China, were posted up in community parks, at bus stations. Everybody knew when someone was taken down and who did it.
Jack, we got to bounce. How do people get more access to your writings and to follow you? What's your Twitter handle, and how do people get access to you?
Twitter handle is Jack Posobiec, JCKPOSOBIEC, and best place to find me is OneAmericanNewsOANN.com.
You're a great American and a true patriot. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much, dude.
When the history of this time is written, it's going to be people like Jack Posobiec that have been the young millennial leaders of this, of turning the tide against the Chinese Communist Party. I now want to bring on a true American patriot, and I got to tell you, one of the greatest men in this country, Brigadier General Robert Spalding. He was the single smartest person in the White House when I had my stint there, and came aboard and was a key part of the team that turned the government around to all of government approach to take on the Chinese Communist Party and really confront them on this information and economic war they've been running against us. He's also a B-2 pilot, which is the creme de la creme in the Air Force. which is just, the criminal Air Force is the equivalent of a third-rate pilot in the Navy. Just kidding. But General Spaulding is just a fantastic individual and learned Mandarin as an adult and then really had an awakening when he was military attaché to Beijing. Dr. Spaulding knows that at a level that very few in the world know it. And I got to tell you, his book, Stealth War, never been crazy about the title, but the book itself is, I think, the best primer you can get, short primer. His and Bill Gertz's book. We'll talk about Bill's when Bill's on. If you got to get 2 books to read and understand it all, get Stealth War by General Spaulding. I can't say enough about the book, and I can't say enough about the guy. General Spaulding, thank you for joining us here on Descent into Hell on Holy Saturday.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be back.
We're going to try to get that a little clearer. Do we need him to call in again, or can we do it right now? Okay, General Spaulding, can you give your assessment of what life is like? What we're trying to do is show that this is not about China and the Chinese people. This is about the Chinese Communist Party. Can you give folks from your expertise as living in Beijing for many, many years and knowing this system very well, what it's like for people, the Chinese people, to live under this brutal dictatorship?
Well, first of all, it's really hard to see. I lived in Shanghai for 2 years with my family. We traveled all over the country. And, the Chinese people, they have a saying, truth to eat bitter, and it really describes, their hardiness and their willingness to work hard and thrive for their family. And I think that's the thing that impressed me the most. But the actually seeing the oppression, because the Chinese Communist Party hides it so well. It's within the school systems, it's within the internet, it's within the propaganda. You see it when you talk to them, when you interface with them. And I remember, being there, just give you an idea of what it's like to live as an employee for a Chinese company in China. What people don't realize is most Chinese that work in China are actually considered illegal aliens. And that's because they have to have something called a hukou in order to legally work in the city that they're in. And so I saw a lot of this in Shanghai where, people would move to the city to get a job, but because they were there illegally without a hukou to be there, essentially they were paid slave wages. And I remember one time, sitting, getting a haircut, and these 3 guys came in, and they're basically in tears. The rest of the Chinese wouldn't look at them because they were out of towners, and they came up to me looking for money, and they were starving. And they were starving because, what would happen is these guys would go and they would work, for a couple weeks, and then show up to get their paychecks, and then rather than giving them their pay, thugs would come and beat them. And this is, so if you think about, here in the 50s and the labor strikes that we had, it's very much going on today in China. And it's a brutal place to live, and the regime, makes it so.
Dr. Spaulding, did we lose Dr. Spaulding? Yeah, I think we did. It was a tough connection. So we'll try to get back. I want to turn now to Jack.
I wanted to get a question into him because he's such a great Air Force veteran, and it struck me when we were talking about Joe Biden going to the Communist Catholic Church to take communion and how it must have felt for those Catholics in China to see that kind of betrayal. And it occurred to me that really, in a way, Steve, that was just like Jane Fonda going to Hanoi, the faith equivalent.
Wow. That's harsh.
Harsh, but true.
General Spaulding's book, Stealth War, but the subtitle is quite important. How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. It's the central issue of the day. Remember, it was the managed decline of the United States by our elites that led to the rise of the Bernie Sanders movement and led to the rise of the Donald Trump movement, and it's the reason Donald Trump is president of the United States. And that all comes from the kowtowing of our financial and business elites and cultural elites to the Chinese Communist Party. This is not about the Chinese people. Remember, tomorrow, the Chinese Communist the people in China, the Chinese people, and the American people are going to share one thing. You're both house Christians. If you're a Christian tomorrow, you're going to be a house Christian. You're going to, for the first time in your life, you're going to worship on Easter in your house. Compliments of the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese People Under the CCP. We're going to return with Dr. Sean Lin.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. It's our special Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese People Under the Chinese Communist Party. I want to thank Epic News, or Epic Times, also New Tang Dynasty TV for live streaming us today. Also G News and GTV that'll have us up a little bit later, subtitled in Mandarin for the world, and of course all of our U.S. distribution partners. Now I want to bring on Dr. Xiaoxi Lin. Dr. Lin is a former Army captain for the United States Army. Also was a researcher and a virus hunter in his Army days. Dr. Lin, can you tell us the daily life of the Chinese people, and particularly people that have a spiritual direction, someone like the Falun? I've already had people, House Christians in the underground Catholic Church. We're going to have Uyghurs later and Tibetan Buddhists. But I want to talk about the Falun Gong, a spiritual practice of many, many people in China. What is daily life under the dictators of the Chinese Communist Party like?
Yeah, so Falun Gong is a Buddhist Qigong that was originated from ancient Chinese culture, and it was opened to the public in 1992. And because it's tremendous health benefit, so it quickly gained its popularity in the 90s. By 1999, it reached more than 70 million people in China. So at the time, before the crackdown started in July 1999, there are so many Chinese people enjoy this exercise and get benefit from it. But the Chinese communist regime launched the persecution on July 99 simply because this group is so large, even bigger than the Communist Party. So after the crackdown started, people suffered tremendously under this brutal crackdown. So many people lost jobs, so many people involuntarily disappeared, so many people kidnapped, so many people were put into labor camp, detention centers, and got even killed. And also one of the biggest crime we have been exposing that the Chinese Communist Party did is forced organ harvesting. And Falun Gong practitioners are the major victim for these evil practice of organ harvesting. So we know that last year, the Independent China Tribunal already made the final judgment. So all the tribunal members concluded unanimously and sure, beyond reasonable doubt, that China has been practicing the organ harvesting on prisoner of conscience for a very substantial period of time, involving a very substantial period of victims. So if we look at the data from the Eastern government, he estimates more than 60,000 to 80,000 people being killed on organ harvesting annually. So more than 1 million people have been died of organ harvesting in China just in the last 20 years.
Dr. Lin, can you tell the American audience, people in America don't understand there's 1.4 billion at least Chinese. There's only 90 million members of the Communist Party, and really a cadre of about 1,000 really run it. It's like the old emperor. Can you be specific, though, and pretty granular? When we talk about organ harvesting and live organ harvesting, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so it's a system, a state-sanctioned system. So basically, because of the advancement in transplant medical technology, so the Communist Party now can, surveillance a lot of people, especially prisoner of conscience, so get their, about informations, their blood samples, their blood type, tissue type, all this information collected and put in the big database system. And so when they connect this system nationwide, it becomes a national, live organ bank that Chinese government control. So if people, go to China, want to do an organ transplant, they can search the database, identify victims, then match the tissue type, the blood type, and then they go to the prison or labor camp, kill the person and take the organ, and then bring it to the transplant center, and then sell it for a big price. So this is called a care on demand system the Communist Party enacted. So they use the military hospital first, and then so many they also jump on it because such huge profit in it. So it become a nationwide system. It's a rampant business that the Communist Party run. So as you mentioned, the Communist Party is only a small part of the society, but so many Chinese people were under its control, so they are easily become the victims. So you see, Uyghurs, Christians, they all become victims as well.
Why
so
is
anyone under their surveillance system, they can become the victims.
We got to bounce here, but my question, I have a question. Why was it particularly the Falun Gong? It seemed to trigger the Chinese Communist Party leadership. The put down. Obviously, the Uyghurs has been brutal. The underground house Christians have been brutal. The Tibetan Buddhists have been brutal. The Catholic Church has been brutal. It's all been brutal. But it seemed like they particularly singled out the Falun Gong. What was it about the Falun Gong that triggered the CCP?
So, very good question. Because in the 80s and 90s, the Qigong, different type, Buddhist Qigong, Taoist Qigong was so popular in China. And Falun Gong was particularly popular. Because it's not just a Qigong, you also have spiritual teaching, right? So you help people to improve their spirituality. So it's focused on teaching of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. So Communist Party is particularly scared that people have their own independent thinking. So many of Falun Gong practitioners, they follow this teaching. They got their own independent thinking. They have their own spiritual belief. So they don't trust the Communist Party, basically, and they want to improve themselves. So Communist Party feel this is a huge threat with a large population. And so in that way, they decided to crack down the whole group because the Communist Party feel they cannot control such a larger group. Yeah, so it's one of the biggest threats to the Communist Party's control because they always rely on the violence and also the mind control, the ideology, brainwashing for people. But the Falun Gong is naturally resist to this brainwashing. So Communist Party has been successful, like infiltrating in different democratic movements, other smaller groups, or other different minority groups. But for Falun Gong, because it covers so many such a large population in China, regardless it's ethnic group or many Han ethnic people, even the Communist Party member, they are practicing Falun Gong. So they feel the Falun Gong is already inside the communist system as well. They feel the threat. So that's why the Communist Party decided to crack down Falun Gong.
Dr. Lin, we got to bounce. Do you have a Twitter handle that people can start to follow you? Do you have a way that people get access to you?
Yes, my Twitter is Sean Lin, WQER. So people can track me on Sean Lin. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. We got to bounce. Thank you very much. We're going to return with Simone Gao and Dr. Thayer in a moment.